Hey there, Business for Unicorns podcast listeners. This is Mark, and I'm here to tell you about an awesome free resource on businessforunicorns.com. If you ever find yourself feeling frustrated with your training gym because you know that there are all sorts of things you could work on, but you're not really sure how to prioritize, you don't know what's the most important thing to work on or what order you should be tackling your priorities, well, now is the time to go to businessforunicorns.com, click the button, and fill out our free self-assessment. With the Ultimate Training Gym Owner Report Card, you will gain immediate clarity on just where to be focusing your attention to create more positive impact on your community, to drive more revenue and take home income, and to do it all with less stress and more peace of mind. So go to businessofunicorns.com, click the button, fill out that free self-assessment, and start building a business and life you love today.
Hello, fitness business nerds. Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. And today I'm here with none other than Mark Fisher and Pete Dupuis. What's up, gents?
Hello.
Hey guys. Feels like springtime almost.
It does. The sunshine is a shining, and I still have like patches of snow in my yard. So I don't know what that is. It's that weird in-between time of year.
I want to open by saying that last time we did a group call together, the three of us, you guys ambushed me like 90 seconds before the call. And I showed up with just my crummy headphones. And you said, your audio sounds great. And then I listened to the three of us yesterday. And you two sound like you're in a recording studio. And I sound like I'm in a cave. And I didn't bother paying attention to details. So I showed up with my microphone today so that I don't look like a person who isn't taking this seriously.
I noticed you were very diligent on making sure your microphone was ready to go. I hope all our listeners and watchers are very appreciative of your commitment to detail.
That's a sneaky pet peeve of mine. When it comes to podcasts, no matter how good the quality is, the quality of the material is, the quality of the recording can torpedo good content as far as I'm concerned, because I am strangely superficial about that, impatient.
Well, if it helps at all,
back on track.
It helps at all. When we recorded the last one, I don't remember lying to you that it didn't sound good. I think you sounded pretty good, and you sound even better today. So yeah, thanks for paying attention to those details. So today's topic, we're just talking about this, but one of the things we realized recently in our Unicorn Society group, so a lot of the members recently were telling us how hard it is for all of them as gym owners and training gym owners, how hard it is for them to stay focused when they're doing detail-oriented work. That it was a very universal sentiment in some of our group coaching calls with Unicorn Society members that they feel like a ping pong ball most days. They feel like they're in a pinball machine, just moving from one task to other task. And most of the time, those tasks are not very meaningful. They feel like they're just putting out fires. And when it comes time to sit down and do deep work, meaningful, focused work, that they just struggle. It's just so hard to both make the time and to find the focus and to avoid distractions. And so one of the things we did actually for the first time today, the day we're recording this, is we actually hosted on Zoom a kind of a 2-hour deep work session with Unicorn Society members. And it started with a little bit of intention setting. What are you going to work on? We did a quick meditation. We had breaks periodically where we stood up and did some stretches. Everyone was accountable to finishing what they said they were going to finish by the end of the call. And so, I say all this as an intro to say, I think it's a pretty universal experience for gym owners that finding time for deep focused work is hard. And when you can find some methods that work for you, like a 2-hour guided session, that it really can be a game changer. Almost everyone on our call today finished what they said they were going to do, which I can't say is always true when I sit down to do focused work. So it was amazing. So I thought I'd bring that topic to this conversation today, which is, so the question I'll start with is, how do you both individually think about doing deep work? And what does it take for you to find that focused space to do deep work? Yeah. Pete, let's start with you, my friend. How do you approach this?
Okay. Well, if I were diving into this today and I weren't working with you guys so closely, you would have been the first two people I reached out to for guidance on it, just because I imagine, based on my first exposure to Time Ninja, there was a deep work skill set tied into anyone who took that seriously. But For me, I had a realization probably in the last year to year and a half where I came in from a work from home day, which I believe was related to a snow day for my kids or something along those lines. And my office manager greeted me and I said, "I'm so sorry. I know you guys were slammed yesterday. I'm so sorry that I wasn't here to help out." And she said, "No offense, but you're better at your job when you're not here than when you are here."
Mm.
And what I realized was, as a gym owner, we're to an extent paid to put out fires. That's what I do. I have an open door policy with my team. They come in, they ask questions in real time. The phone rings, my office manager pops her head in constantly. And very rare are the days where I go home with my to-do list done. And so I decided to just build off of that success. And since that time, we made one of my weekdays a defined work from home day. And on those days, I don't take my phone off the charger when I get out of bed in the morning until right around noontime. And my wife knows the best ways to connect with me when I'm having those deep work type days. But I find that I get more work done between putting my kids on the bus on Tuesday mornings and lunch than I do like Wednesday through Friday of the days to follow. And it's sad, but deep work is just distraction free work for me, and I can control the variables. But as we all signed up to be the owners and the operators, we owe it to our team to deliver that kind of accessibility if we are on site. So I understand why it happens, but for me, it's about separating myself from the operation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well said. And I thought that was just a really good example, Pete, right? Of like if when you can be distraction free and you can control the variables, I think you said on those Tuesdays, you get more done in those few hours than you can in multiple days combined. Like I think it's a really powerful example that people don't appreciate enough is that when you can find what works for you and find focused time for deep work, you can be really productive and it can be really satisfying time. It does require all of that boundary setting that you described.
Well, I will follow up by saying that if you're listening to this and you've never stepped away from the business for that type of a day or chunk of a day, you might have hesitation that you feel like you're going to be perceived to not be towing the line with everybody else or taking ownership liberties that other people don't get. And that anxiety was there for me. But the team recognizes your output in different ways. That's what I started to see. My office manager obviously did. She noticed a very empty email account and a variety of other components done sooner than usual. But the other thing is, strangely enough, the team starts to protect that time for you. So we're recording on a Tuesday right now. Tuesday is typically my day at home. And when I travel for work, I was out in California delivering a lecture last week. I typically get back and I will do my Tuesdays in the building because I've been off site for a couple days. I want to make sure that the team sees that I'm showing face. I'm trying to kind of kill two birds on this day. And every member of my staff has approached me and said, "Why are you here? Isn't Tuesday your work from home day?
Mm-hmm.
We don't need you. Like, we're doing okay." and
we see your face now. Go home.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like when I bleed past 5:30 and people pop their head in and they're like, "Pete, just so you know, Owen and Colin need to be picked up by 6, and you're pushing it." They do actually respect and value your kind of carved out time in that sense, so long as you're clear about it. And it's, I don't know. I think maybe we just don't give our employees as much credit as we should when we think that they're judging us for overstepping as owners and not working as hard. Mm-hmm. They want to see us be just as productive as we want to see them be. So it was a strange caveat that I stumbled upon over years of slowly stepping away from 7-day work weeks.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Victor, I know this is a topic you've thought about a lot, and as we've delivered our Time Ninja course over the years, this is a topic that I've seen you talk a lot about. So, what are your current thoughts on your approach to deep work?
Yeah, so I am, I think in some ways ill-equipped probably to speak to this in some ways because this really speaks to my cyborg tendencies. And I probably admittedly go way too far with Pete's version where I'm kind of on a permanent work from home day. Now, part of this is at this point in my life and career, I know that how I'm most productive and how I like to work. But admittedly, essentially never have meetings, usually before 1:30 at the earliest. So I'm able to keep a pretty free calendar of at least opportunities for deep work. Now, when we're talking about really dedicated distraction-free time to work on key high-value projects, so this is distinct from work one can do on their own, but isn't necessarily moving the ball forward. Things such as keeping up with social media notifications, answering emails, et cetera, et cetera. So in my world, for instance, this is things like writing emails, creating courses, working on speeches, et cetera. The three things I think are worth unpacking here is someone assesses their relationship with their ability to do work and not be distracted, is that, to my mind, there are three core types of distractions. There are physical external distractions, there are digital external distractions, and there are internal distractions. The first piece, physical external distractions, is arguably the easiest one to manage. Now, if you're working in an office with employees, in theory, this should be easy enough, though depending if you work in an open office space, it can be hard. It's something, frankly, I have an ongoing conversation with the MFF business team about, the challenges of not constantly interrupting each other with "got a minutes." And there's a few different ways one can leverage this, but the most effective for most people is having a certain part of your day where the door is able to be closed, or you're really able to communicate to your coworkers that, let's say hypothetically, from 10 to 2, unless it's an emergency and the gym is on fire, I'm going to be in my office working, getting things done. Thank you for respecting that time. Now, when you're working from home, in theory, you could do the same thing, but depending on the age of your cohabitation humans, that may or may not be as effective, which is why I suspect my life is about to change drastically once the little chaos agent moves in with us. But in theory, the same thing stands, right? It's, you're just telling people, don't come and knock on the door and don't interrupt me. I'm working on stuff, but you're doing it in a way that's nice. So that is easy enough. The digital external distractions are also not that difficult. It's largely a matter of putting your phone on do not disturb. If you have browsers on if you have lots of tabs open, as many people do in today's day and age, and there's lots of bings and buzzes and notifications, in a perfect world, minimize those tabs. Or if you want to go all in, something I've done recently in the past couple of months, I actually purchased one of those Chrome plugins that allows my inbox will automatically hide itself after 2 minutes or 3 minutes of no activity. So what that means is, if I'm working on things, I'm not seeing if I'm getting notifications, it just goes away. So again, that is relatively simple. I think for most people, the hardest part really is the third one, which is the internal distraction. Now, there's a lot that has been written and said about how much our ability to pay attention has been compromised by the buzzings and the beepings and the constant craving of dopamine that has been developed by the people I reference most frequently on this podcast, which are the tech oligarch overlords that rule our society. And whether that is something that is a function of the tech, it probably has some impact, or whether this is just the way human brains are designed, it seems the internal disruptions are the most difficult. So a common technique here, one of the most effective that I think most people have played with, is something called a Pomodoro. So for people not familiar with this, this is a 25-minute dedicated work sprint with a 5-minute break. And it's called a Pomodoro, hilariously, because the individual that invented this approach to deep work sprint was Italian, and he had a tomato timer that he did, an oven timer, and hence they called it Pomodoro. So sort of a quirky name for it, but basically what it means is 25 minutes on, a 5-minute break. Now, I don't necessarily think that 25 minutes is always going to be the perfect amount of time to do deep work. I think depending on the task, something might be better with 50 minutes on and a 10-minute break, or maybe even a little bit longer. But I think what can be valuable about this is appreciating that the human brain is a biological entity, right? We aren't a machine. So it takes a little time for us to rev up and get into tasks. And importantly, conversely, we can't go forever and ever once the snowball is rolling. We're going to need breaks. So if you think of your day as an endurance event, you can't sprint the entire day. And counterintuitively, by taking more breaks, particularly early in the day while you're fresher, your aggregate output over the day will likely be higher overall. And I'll offer one other final pro tip, because one of the challenges a lot of individuals have is getting started. So let's say you've set up your 25 minutes, you have communicated to your coworkers to not bother you, you have put your phone on do not disturb to minimize your browsers. There's still the discomfort if I don't want to do it. And the brain recognizes unwanted tasks is a similar effect as literal physical pain. So procrastination is the brain's attempt to relieve the pain of doing this thing you don't want to do. And our approach here, as Ninja Master Goethe would say, is there is magic in the beginning. You just start. If you just get yourself just to do it, that's what I like about the 25-minute session, even though in practice it's not always, I think, as effective as maybe a longer section, depending on what you're working on. It's a little bit more bite-sized and feels less daunting. And you can play with even shorter variants. If you find 25 minutes is too long for you to really commit, maybe play a game and say, I'm just going to work for 10 minutes. I'm just going to just let myself write crappy stuff for 10 minutes. And then invariably what happens is once the snowball is rolling, if you have mitigated these other potential external interruptions, you can likely keep that train going. I'll just caution again one more time. Your potential pitfall there is you don't want to then do like a 75-minute, hour, 45-minute sprint and then collapse and not be as effective for the rest of your day. So those are some of my thoughts on deep work stuff.
Yeah. Anything you would add to that, Pete?
My addition is that you are often saddled with the responsibility of interviewing, and the audience desperately needs to hear how you're balancing the workload you have right now. So I want to kick it to you. I want to hear your version of this answer, because between pursuing a graduate degree and running multiple businesses and dealing with myself and Mark in your inbox, what's the key to success here?
Yeah.
Pete, what about me? I was in Morocco last week. What about me, Pete?
You were shockingly responsive.
Do you know how difficult that was on the villa, Pete? No.
Well, yeah, thanks for the volley, Pete. Well, I want to just kind of plus one everything you all said, right? Because 100%, I think setting boundaries and avoiding distractions is a key part of this, right? A key part is setting your time up to be to not get distracted. I think that, and everything Fisher said, I think is super spot on. I think the one thing I would add that's particularly true for me, and I see this a lot in our Unicorn Society members, is that I get I get off the tracks before I even sit down to do the work. My resistance to a task can be so deep that I can set aside the time and get rid of all distractions and still not sit down to do the task. And for me, when I turn the mirror on myself and say, okay, Michael, well, you did everything you know to do, right? You set up the time block, you turn off the notifications, you meditated beforehand, you created an outline of what you want to accomplish, you were only going to work for 5-10 minutes, right? I did all the things that Mark mentioned. And for me, sometimes what I have to recognize is, well, then what the hell is my resistance to this task? It's not as simple often as I just don't want to do it. That's sometimes it. But more often than not for me, the resistance is like, well, I actually feel like I have no idea if I'm going to be good at this. And I don't want to be exposed as being someone who has no fucking clue what they're talking about, or I'm not confident I can produce the product I promised here. Maybe I need help. I should go talk to someone else first, right? So for me, often the train goes off the tracks before it even is scheduled to leave, right? That I will sabotage myself before that moment even comes. And so if anything, if I have a tip there about that, is to be really honest with yourself about when you feel resistance to a task. And when you're being honest with yourself, I think the step after honesty is curiosity about like, well, why? What is it about this task that I'm feeling resistance to? Right. And often it's those things we talk about, these catchphrases we use, like it's imposter syndrome, right? I don't think I'm actually good at this. I don't think I actually know how to do it. Right. Or it might also be a little bit of boredom, right? I'm not doing this task because I'm so bored by it. It's not even that I want to do it. It's just so easy for me that I can't even get excited about it, right? And there are layers and layers. Right? Those are two examples. But for me, I think it's about that curiosity of if I feel resistance to a task and I'm repeatedly just not showing up to do it when I said I would, there's something to be curious about there. And then frankly, that just happened on a phone call this morning with a Unicorn Society member. Right? They had set up this time to do this work and they kept not going back to it because they were nervous about not knowing how to do what they want to do in the spreadsheet. Like I don't know. I'm gonna feel stupid when I start to do this because I know there's shit I don't know how to do. So I'm just gonna avoid feeling stupid by not even starting this task. And so yeah, that's where often I get stuck.
I was just gonna say that I get stuff done when I told you guys I would do it. And so accountability partnership can be a pretty wonderful thing here. Yep. I recently used it in fitness with a friend of mine, where we basically just said, let's do this hard thing that we know we'll never do otherwise. And all we have to do is send a text message every evening, checking the box. Did I or didn't I not do it? And peer pressure is pretty wonderful in that sense. So I would consider possibly, saying, hey, Fisher, I am making a declaration I'm going to do this thing today. Will you do me a favor and shoot me a text tonight? That's how I do all of my coaching in Unicorn Society. Do you want me to shoot you a text tomorrow and ask you if you did the thing? Everybody does it. They love it. They can't get enough of getting that ping saying, hey, Keeler, did the Instagram post go up or not? And more often than not, it does. I mean, Drew Skaggs took an assignment this morning, told me he'd have it done by tomorrow. And he had an example in my inbox in like 35 minutes. And so I realized just promising someone you'll give them a nudge is enough. So if you want to build that in, that could be a useful tool. The other thing I wanted to say, just as it came to me as Mark was talking, is that there are a collection of overachievers in my life, uber achievers, hyper productive people. When I think about my correspondence with all of them since the most recent iOS update, every single one of them has their notifications turned off according to their text messages.
Interesting.
Literally every single one. Mark yourself included.
Point.
Every single one. There isn't a single overachiever in my network who is not silencing their notifications. And I honestly don't know what the protocol is for being a kind friend. Do I keep pinging them with text messages when I see that notification? How do I attack that? Am I being selfish? But it's just kind of an observation of mine, and take what you will from it. I personally don't have mine muted. I haven't learned from these lessons, but food for thought.
Well, I think it's a really great thought, Pete, because at the end of the day, so much of the theme of what we're talking about here is if you want to do deep work, it requires you setting some boundaries, right? And setting some boundaries with people, with team members, with people you live with, setting some boundaries with your technology, right? Setting some boundaries with your time, setting some boundaries with maybe accountability. And so I think, if there's any theme of this is that people hesitate to set boundaries. And for many of the reasons you mentioned, I feel like my job is to put out fires and be available. So if I'm not available to put out fires, am I even doing my job? Are people going to think I'm checked out? People are going to think I'm an absentee owner. And the reverse is true, is that when you communicate clearly about the important work you're going to get done when you set these boundaries, people will help support you in maintaining those boundaries. And we've seen it time and time again with Unicorn Society members. When they do get better at setting boundaries, everyone is better off for it. Everyone gets it. Right. There was someone in our group who does a lot of kind of coaching by cell phone with her clients. And all she did was set some time boundaries for when she will be responsive to those. And it was a game changer for her. And then she took it even a little bit farther to say, instead of talking with you all one-on-one, I'm going to do one-on-one on these days and then only a group during these hours, right? So just setting a few boundaries was like a complete game changer for the amount of time she had in her life to do other things. And so, it's a powerful skill to get better at.
That's great.
Yeah. Any other tips you want to share on this topic? I feel like we covered a lot of ground pretty quickly. Anything else we're dying to share with our listeners about setting themselves up for success, doing deep work?
I'll just share one quick thing, which is just an interesting thought that I think needs to be contextualized, because I think it's true sometimes and maybe not all the times, but I am participating this year in Strategic Coach, which some people might be familiar with, which is a very long running kind of the first executive coaching program. And Dan Sullivan, I find to be a very interesting, helpfully contrarian thinker at times. And one of the points he makes in a great book, which I think we've referenced before, called Who Not How, is that sometimes when you find resistance and you don't want to do the work, the answer is don't do it. Get somebody else to do it. It just means you don't want to do it. So have somebody else do it. Now, I think, as always, that advice is maybe not right in every single context, but as our friends, the statisticians say, all models are wrong. Some are useful. I think one wants to be cautious about when you pull that card, but I think there's something to be said for when you're finding the real resistance to do the work is you really just don't want to do it, is just curiously asking, is it possible this is not in your zone of genius and it's conceivable somebody else might be able to do that for you? Now, depending on where you are in your business, sometimes you might have to eat the frog just because of constraints of time and resources. You can't actually outsource it. But there is something to be said for when you're the entrepreneur and you're running the business, a lot of the job is constantly looking to get the things off your plate that are taking away your energy, because odds are they're not things that you're really that great at anyway.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think the first step to, like I had mentioned earlier, is getting curious about what the resistance is. And if you can put your finger on it,
totally.
then you can do something
Totally.
about it. And if it is like, I just shouldn't be doing this, great. Right. I think it's a really great first step. Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's end it there, my friends. This was a great conversation. I hope listeners, you got something out of it and you're starting to be a little more self-reflective about what deep work looks like for you. And hopefully some of these tips will be useful. So thanks so much, gents. Let's do this again sometime.
Thank
I
you,
believe
guys.
we will.
Always enjoy these.
Well, I hope you loved today's podcast. And forgive me, I want to remind you one more time, if you haven't already done so, head over to businessofunicorns.com, click the button, and get your free self-assessment, the ultimate training gym owner report card. I promise you, you're going to want to dig into this resource and get the support you need, finding crystal clarity on exactly where you need to be focusing to create a life and a business you love.